everyone. Hope everyone's been having a good day. So the session we're going to present today, a little bit different maybe to some of the other sessions that people are indulging in. I guess a lot of folks are speaking about how project management can support and enable a resilient world. And we're going to take a different tack. Our view is that as project managers, we can only do so much to influence that. We can execute our projects well, but essentially our environments, our organizations give us the environment within which we can do that. They choose the things we do. They give us the framework within which we can do it. So project managers, we can only do so much. So we can't leave it up to project managers to be the only people that are helping us drive our environmental and social activities as an organization. But what we can hope perhaps is that our organization will give us a framework within which those environmental and social goals can be tackled and prioritized and put in the context of all the other stuff that we're doing. So today we're going to introduce you to a couple of things that hopefully offer you an effective framework connecting business purpose, environmental and social governance, and project delivery to give you a path to a resilient world. And that's the intro. Just skipping across to go to the next slide. The two of us today, Merv's kind of given us the introduction here, really. I'm David. I've run a couple of businesses and I've set this thing up called the Business Integrated Governance Community Interest Company. You can read more and follow our links. And my partner in crime is Alex. Do you want to say anything, Alex?
Hi, guys.
Or are you okay?
Yeah, I'm Alex. Thanks, Merv, for your intro before. I specialize in taking things over mid-flight, which normally means recovery. So most of the time, that's failing projects, programs, portfolios, the twin evils, inadequate governance, inadequate definition. But another big factor that crops up a lot is the driver for these initiatives comes top down, but for some reason, the people at the top lose focus. You're no longer on their radar. Your resources get taken away. You get swept under the carpet. And those factors are very important for this presentation. Thanks. Okay, so this slide. So project and program management. We do an awful lot in the delivery for environmental and social goals. And if we don't deliver the outputs, you won't get your outcomes. That's fine. We're PMs. That's what we do. We deliver outputs. But we are not accountable for these outcomes. That accountability is right at the top. So in a world where if we don't get our environmental and social outcomes achieved, humanity is going to have some problems. How can we fix this? How does it affect us as project managers? Is there something else that needs to be done in the organizations within which we work? Next slide, please, David.
The first question we want to ask, and we'll dig into this, is can we do the right things? The challenge we've got, I guess, is that most of our organizations have a profit motive. We're based in the 1970s business philosophy of self-interest motive that leads to focus on capturing financial income, which is an issue. And there's a quote I've taken there out of a publication I've given you a link to, and I'll just read it out. As long as an organization is operating to their own financial or survival interest, staying within the law and engaging competitively within the market, then market will automatically optimize society's well-being. I don't think we're seeing that happen. I don't think that's true. And it's clearly not exactly serving us very well. Our climate change is problematic. We've got wars all over the world. We need to do a little bit more than that. So as individuals, we might, as project managers, want to do the right thing. And our organizations might go as far as to set up corporate social responsibility programs to invest in and take the corporate's view of the world a step forwards. But that's always going to be fighting with the profit motive. So in the mindset, in the organization set that we have, we're always going to be fighting. And even if we do take on corporate social responsibility programs, the perception is, and I'll read this out again, these tend to result in an ad hoc series of actions which do good and may be comprehensive, but remain peripheral to the operation of the business. What we're trying to suggest is that unless we bake key purpose objectives through our business purpose and into our strategy, then we might get some progress with corporate social responsibility programs. We might do the right things amongst ourselves, but we're still going to bump into problems. And that's where we're coming from in this session today. Question one, Alex, I think you were going to ask people to,
Yes.
you're going to talk people through this introduction to it.
The results I'm seeing on the screen now are very unusual, very surprising. It may be because of the forum we're in. It's PM for the world, and therefore a lot of people are coming from organizations that are about environmental and social stuff.
But we did this poll on the PMI's LinkedIn group, and the balance across about 14,000 people looked at the poll. We got about 160 responses, and we could definitely see that there were a good number of people whose organizations were not really dealing with environmental and social goals. They're asking people to do the right things rather than baking that stuff through the cake. So I think there's still some challenges there to address. Okay, moving on from that background, for those people that perhaps are trying to have to implement goodness off their own bat, there is help at hand. Maybe the people that have got their objectives baked through the strategy know about this stuff already. I don't know. But there's a publication from the British Standards Institute. It's being currently turned into an ISO standard. It's called PAS 808. You can look it up. Essentially, it's a guide to help governing bodies. My interpretation is to take on board the worldviews and the values of owners, stakeholders, shareholders, whoever that needs to be discussed. Take on board their values and bake those values into the business purpose. There's then a cascade of those values into strategy and into the policies and standards the organization has, which means that rather than having an individual that try to do the right thing or try and package that stuff up into a corporate program which just collects everything that's good, a lot of the good things that we want to achieve in environmental and social terms gets baked through the strategy and is easy to drive through the organization. And in purpose terms for PAS, purpose doesn't just mean make money. It means to respond to all of the worldviews of all of the stakeholders, which is slightly different. Wouldn't you agree? Okay. So even if, let's assume then that we've started to think about canvassing the worldviews of our key stakeholders, shareholders, and everyone we want to pull in, and we've bake that into our organization's purpose that we can all own, and that's starting to cascade through the organization through our strategic objectives. What's the next issue? The next issue is that for many of us, strategy delivery is failing. Strategy delivery doesn't work. We've done a number of events where this has come up anecdotally, but on screen now you can see a number of quotes from a number of publications. I'll pick out a couple. Companies on average only deliver 63% of the financial performance of their strategies. 82% of Fortune 500 CEOs feel their organization effective at strategy planning. There's another quote there. There's a governance body, that's a US governance body, that talks about, that did a survey last year, and it asked its respondents what they thought was really important for board level improvements, and 70% of responders thought that improving strategy delivery was one of the things that needed to be improved. So we might be able to get purpose worked out and cascaded into our strategy, but the question is, can we deliver our strategic objectives? And the suggestion is from these surveys is possibly not. So Alex, over to you.
Question time. Please get your Menti ready. Does your organization A, do nothing about strategy delivery other than tell you what the strategy is to aim for? Or B, superimpose strategic programs and expect them to be achieved on top of your existing workloads. Oh, I know that one. And C, have a clear cascade of strategic objectives and manage the balance between strategic change, operations, and value creation.
And again, I think our audience is from a mature background. Our experience quite a lot is that most people we deal with are pretty immature with respect to their strategic capability. They've got some very bright people and some very great strategies, but are not necessarily turning that into strategic management particularly effectively. That they have lots of capability in project and program management, so the strategic program works pretty well. But not many people can boast about having a fully connected up, integrated strategic approach to objective management. But clearly, the seven folks that are on the call are lucky enough to be in that place.
No, I'm just saying, you guys, the 7 of you in with the orange box, question C, maybe you do know, but I'm thinking you just don't know how lucky you are. They are very unusually mature organizations. It's usually exactly the other way around. It's 50% or more for question A, maybe 30% for question B, and you're lucky if you hit 15 to 20% for question C. So very interesting on the audience. Well, the organizations that the audience are working within. Impressive.
Let's offer then what do we mean by an integrated approach? We're moving on to talk about what the components of that prepared integrated structure might look like. What we're primarily talking about is an approach to integrating governance, is to connecting from the drivers that we were hit with outside of our organization, the opportunities we see, the threats we get hit with, the imperatives we're forced to have, the goals that our shareholders and owners give us. We take that, we evaluate that, and we develop that alongside the worldviews of our key shareholders, our key stakeholders, and develop a clear purpose for what our organization is about. Are we just about making money, or are there things that we really want to achieve that help to sustain well-being for all of humanity, as melodramatic as that might sound? From that purpose, then we should be driven to the strategic objectives that we have, which we can cascade through our business and negotiate and obviously develop those if we need to. Carry out our workloads in business as usual, value creation and change. See how we get on in terms of performance and how that affects our organization, and keep going through the strategic process. For us, this strategic process is one that helps us build good into the strategy and then the operation of the business. So a key component of BIG is to provide the framework to manage this whole set of information together. Why is this difficult? It can be difficult from a number of reasons. Not only are we perhaps trying to get priority for non-profit motive based objectives, things that we'd like to do, but we're trying to balance between doing the right things today and doing the right things tomorrow. So most people that on this session would have heard about run and change. Part of our organization is to operate and function and develop and deliver outputs, but we have to enable our organization to be good for tomorrow. So we've got a balance between run and change, and we've got to manage this constant flip flight. Do we have it as a scrap, a constant fight, or can we manage this? And that's the proposition with BIG, that we can operate our governance such that it becomes a debate, a negotiation, rather than a scrap. Taking that just a little step further then, another key aspect of BIG is that we assume a strategic process. And this is so in our model, the idea is that our organization understands the worldviews, the aspirations of its shareholders and key stakeholders, and those give us our purpose and goals. Clearly, we have to respond to the emergent regulatory imperatives, look at opportunities and threats our business faces, understand our current state, and our strategic process will give us that strategic plan. And that isn't just a one-off process. That's constantly iterating, listening, and to keep us to be agile about what our world hits us with. And that information set we refer to in BIG that's produced is our strategy information model, that clear set of information that gives us the objectives that we cascade down, and all of the accountabilities and documentation that clarifies and makes it crystal clear. So a key component of the big framework is this strategic process, the operating model for strategy, and the ability to cascade that through the organization. If we have the operating model, it sounds nice and simple, but clearly it isn't. And while it looks nice on a piece of paper, we've got to get that into our organization. And what that ends up meaning is that we're having to find people who are accountable and distribute resources amongst them. And we need to distribute resources amongst them so that they can get on and be fairly accountable and be able to progress towards achieving the key measures, the benefits, expectations, the value outputs that we want from them. And this is not straightforward. This is not easy. The job of prioritizing is hard in itself, but then making sure that resources, leadership, time, and funds are deployed in line with those priorities is even more difficult. And furthermore, if we have environmental and social goals that we want to drive through this, if the only means that we've got presently is to have return on investment, net present value type measures, then those items aren't going to get prioritized at all. So we need not only to have a good strategic process that gives us objectives we can prioritize, but we need to cascade those through our organization and maintain the importance of the environmental and social goals that alongside their brothers and sisters, which have more numerical or measurable metrics. So this is a real challenge that we're addressing in BIG. And so what we offer then, and what we suggest is that the big framework enables us to define the strategy operating model, help us define the strategy information model, and then set up a protocols for governance and accountability that allow us to join the operations that in product development, asset creation, performance, business as usual, as well as the change initiatives that we have. So instead of trying to keep those in separate domains, we can pull all that stuff together and make choices as we see fit across domains to make sure that we're balancing all these, but also balancing our profit motive as well as the social and environmental responsibilities that we have. So that's the key. That's the big picture with the big stuff. So what does it mean we have to build? So it's all right to talk about lots of things in theory. I've already mentioned a couple of these, but we've got some building blocks we could actually physically make. And the big framework talks about what it is you actually have to make. The strategy information model, we've talked that through already. The complete, coherent cascade and integration of objectives and all the related information through the organization. That's the vital backbone for strategy delivery. The operating model to keep our strategy reassessed, to keep listening to the outside world, to keep adjusting, to keep responding to performance and tweaking and being agile as an organization. So that those two operating models we've already mentioned. But then the big framework, we need to build a clear and understand clearly how our organization functions. What are the roles? What are the responsibilities? Most of us would argue we should know that already. But then clear governance frameworks which hold people to account, because accountability is a next key component of this. We need to really and truly be able to hold people to account for what their objectives are. And we can hold people to account with good information and data. If we haven't got good information and data, we can't bring measures together. They can't control what they're doing, and we can't hold them to account for the objectives that they have. And to make this happen, we need clear leadership to allow us to drive this model, to expect this way of working. But then we need to support how it works. We need assurance to demand how that we do the right things the right way, and we call it business support to enable us to operate effectively. And of course, underpinning all this, the processes and tools that we perhaps already work need to organize those together and drive them and coordinate them so they all work together. and to make sure that our tools all support what we do tactically, but enable us to see the information set that we need to make this work. One more box before we move on to the next section. A lot of folks that I speak to are very interested in the information part of this. So this is really an elaboration of the information and data piece. Many of us who work in organizations perhaps are very used to sending information. I'll send Alex a spreadsheet, he'll send me a PowerPoint, very much work that way, which means that it's very easy to struggle with accountability, to truly understand what that information is and hold people to account with it, especially if we're trying to manage by PowerPoint. So the premise, the proposition in Big is that instead of sending information, we start to look at the key information we need to hold people to account and to manage governance, and we pull it together. We pull it together and make that information available through standard BI management information, BI tools that we have. And we gather that into central data platforms where we can understand where it's come from, we can validate it, and we can plug in the tools of choice that we have and plug in new tools of choice if we want to change them. And we'll draw feeds perhaps from our RAID systems for risks and issues, maybe the objectives and key results. We can pull those from our OKR platforms, the data itself in our line, the business solutions, and various other work management tools. So these are the key components of Big. These are the building blocks we believe that are needed to underpin strategy delivery. Have I missed anything, Alex? Or have I rambled on too long?
I think that was excellent. Thank you very much. Let's crack on with another question. So, thank you, everybody. Menti time again. Again, does your organization have none of these building blocks in place, specifically for strategy deliveries, and you just expect your executives to manage without the building blocks, the information flows, etc.? Do you use a portfolio management approach to drive business change, including some form of support office? Or C, the biggie, do you have a strategic management operation and infrastructure so you can connect the purpose to vision, to strategy, delivery of change, operation performance, and most importantly, value creation? Very impressive and incredibly uncommon. Can we crack on because we're pushed for time, if everybody's okay with that slide? Thanks. So can organizations commit to such transformation or continue to only pay lip service to sustainability? So what you've gathered from what David's been presenting is Big is about saying, what are your purposes? What are your strategy? How do you go down to delivery? What's the information flow back up? Is the board aware of everything at the top that you're doing regarding your purposes? And the issue being that most organizations have two key metrics, money and headcount. And then they'll have usually a third metric. If you manufacture widgets, if that's the purpose of your organization, you're going to have an awful lot of dashboards and KPIs and metrics around widgets. So Big will work for any purpose. But E&S goals are difficult. It's not just like saying we build widgets. Your E&S goals will be different for each organization. So what mechanism is there to say, the board says our purpose, one of our purposes, E&S goals, this is our strategy, cascade down, implement some projects and programs, make change in the operational side of business, make sure we get the information feeding back up. Because if the information doesn't feed back up, the top levels will forget you exist. They will not focus on these goals. These goals will be swept under the carpet. So that's what we're saying. Big connects from purpose to strategy and prioritized delivery. And I think E&S goals, more than many other goals, are at very high risk of being ignored and losing focus from C-suite. And that's why we thought it was worthwhile for us to come here and chat to you chaps with this presentation. Can I have the next slide, please, David? So if you implement big business integrated governance, what's the impact? What's the outcome? We believe that more strategic outcomes will be achieved and you'll have greater agility, efficiency, and effectiveness. You have the information flows, you have clear accountability, clear responsibility. Everybody knows what's happening. It's none of these 100-page slide packs being given out at board meetings. It's clear communication. Everybody's up to date and on the same page. It means that any goals, but in this case, your E&S goals, are a part of policy, strategy, and business as usual delivery. So we absolutely believe that the big business integrated governance enables a path to a resilient world, because you need an effective framework that connects your purpose, your environmental and social goals, and your project delivery. Does that make sense? Did I get that across? Yep.
So Alex, yeah. So the reason why we're talking to the project community is that we need to get delivery of this not just in the project community, but within and across and amongst all the other things that are going on in our businesses, and that those need to be prioritized. So it's not just the project community that we need to look to magically do all this stuff for us. Press the right button.
Some people might think these three little, they're almost like little letters, are a bit cheeky to some, but they're like think about it slides. Dear project managers, if you don't have a prioritization framework connected to strategy, are you ever going to get the support and recognition from the top? And in this case, are you going to be able to finish an ESG project without delay, scope change, and or cancellation? And I'm saying that from somebody who comes from a recovery background. You have great project managers, program managers, you have great project and program teams, but because they lose the support from the top, they no longer get the support, and those initiatives wither. I think we've got a project or program or portfolio management slide next. Portfolio managers. How, as a portfolio manager, how can you prioritize, measure, report, drive workloads to achieve your E&S goals if your organization only has a culture or an approach, finance, and return on investment? Yeah, that's how we worked in the 1970s. That was 50 years ago. We think there's a much better way to go forward in the future. I think that's one for you, David.
Yeah, this is for me. I run a small to medium-sized business. We have business purpose and business objectives. I'm very keen on things like net promoter score, customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, as well as revenue and profit. But we have to consider more than just that these days. Our shareholders are human beings, and it's our responsibility as people running businesses to do things for the good of everyone. So we should be helping the world do better. So we need to start, I believe, as business owners, putting environmental and social goals and doing our bit into the purpose of our organizations. And in the past, perhaps, investors wouldn't care a hoot if executives ignored all that stuff because they just want the share price and a dividend. But I don't think that's the case anymore. I don't think as business owners and executives we can be that irresponsible. We have to play our part in sustainable well-being for the whole of humanity, with not a single shred of melodrama in those phrases. So think about it. I think there's our owners and investors are going to expect us to deliver social and environmental goals. And if we can't build them through our purpose, we can't deliver through strategy, we haven't got infrastructure to make it happen, then we're not going to do what they really want us to do. And that's where we were coming from with that one.
David, we got 5 minutes.
So,
we're pretty much there.
Yep.
Can we see in the comments if we've got any questions? I see lots of people saying we can see the screen.
Crikey, lots of thumbs up. I'm not sure how I can share this, but I will try. A number
I've
of
got a
things.
question from a new here. Does cultural variation play a huge role? And then Amara is saying that cultural background, yes, our cultures affect our leadership skills because of ageism and all that. I'm
Well,
I'm I'm an old dog, but I still think I can change.
there's a United Nations standard that suggests as business owners the sort of things for good that we should be looking at, and that those are and equality in the workplace is one of them. Closing the gender pay gap is another key one. Taking on board addressing the skills gap. There are practical things like that which we should as business owners be looking towards, as well as trying to get our employees to travel by train, to use sustainable materials, to use energy sources in our offices which are good, to use electric car schemes. There's lots of stuff that I think is just part of business culture that we need to drive through our purpose and support with our business strategies. But to get those initiatives driven alongside our profit-driven motives is a bit tough unless we're a bit more systematic about it. And I think that's what we're arguing here. Just scanning through some more of the questions. There's how to organize your own screening at work, how to host your own film screening. There's Esther Gordon-Smith's offering a few points up there to look at, which look very interesting for some of the things that would drive our worldviews and our own values, which underpin purpose. That's all good stuff.
David, we've got 1 minute left. Do we now politely have to say thank you from him and all that sort of stuff?
I think we do. If folks want to carry on the conversation, then there's the big CIC website to go and have a look at, but we've also got a business integrated governance website and LinkedIn page. So if you want to take up, this is only an introduction. If you'd like to know more, please contact Alex and myself, or dig in. Think there's tons of stuff there to process. And Merv's back on screen. That means we've got to be quiet.
And thanks to PMI for the opportunity to present to you.
No, thank you guys. This is fantastic, and I'm glad you did use Mentimeter. You got some responses, I have to say, and as you realised, it can be quite hard work because this is a broadcast mechanism, and it will be 12 seconds before people hear what I actually said. It can be a bit of a challenge, but I think we've got some good results. We are pretty much up to time. There was one question I was going to ask in terms of the adoption of the big approach. Do you see either much difference between the private and public sector, or are there particular sectors that really get this and you say, here's some examples of organizations?
It's pretty new, and there's lots of people cherry picking from this, but the private sectors, most organizations that we've really engaged with the private sector. Government sector is a little bit standoffish at the moment. There's a couple of charity sector organizations that are not particularly happy with their connection of strategy to delivery and want to ramp up how they do things and bring their strategy delivery to be on a more professional basis. So the big framework is very useful to them because they don't have a model to use otherwise. And I've also been speaking to a number of people from government agencies who are worried about spending review and having to look back at everything that happens, be able to map out objectives and benefits beyond just the projects and programs in flight, to look at their whole organization. So the big framework clearly would help that, because it's not just looking at projects and investments, it's looking at the value delivery from each of their business units, not just the project and change side of it. Yeah, there are examples and use cases on the big website. Please do dig in and have a browse.
I certainly will do, and I know you're creating quite a movement with this whole new approach, and I think that's fantastic. So thank you so much for your participation. Really useful, and I'm sure we'll see you again in one of our many upcoming webinars to hear a little bit more about that. So